Hey, Bryan Barletta here from Sounds Profitable, and I'm excited to walk you through another great product deep dive. This month, we have Chase Bernhardt of Veritonic joining us to talk all about Veritonic Attribution. Chase, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. Excited to chat.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited to walk through this. We had a chance to do another deep dive with Veritonic, and Veritonic's been getting a lot of buzz lately, specifically around attribution. But before we dig into the attribution product, could you take a moment and talk a little bit about Veritonic overall and what services you guys provide?
Yeah, absolutely. So Veritonic is a full funnel audio measurement and analysis platform. So really designed to answer any and all questions about creative effectiveness, campaign effectiveness, ways to optimize creatives and individual audio campaigns. We are strictly audio first, and we have a number of core offerings as part of it. So kind of the very beginning, we have our competitive intelligence platform, where our system is actually ingesting the top podcasts and streaming radios to hear what's out there, what's being advertised, who's advertising, seeing what the share of voice looks like in the different industries, and actually estimating effectiveness based on our kind of AI predictive on some of our creative measurements. So that's a competitive intelligence side. Then we have our creative measurement offering as well. Typically, clients use this for pre-market campaign testing for different variations of audio logos or ads or podcasts, things of that nature, to capture the emotional resonance and what people remember, things of that nature. And then finally, we have our specific attribution and brand lift. And I loop those two together intentionally, which we'll talk about here as we dig into it. But those are closely tied together, where we're able to see overall campaign effectiveness live in the market in a number of different ways. So again, kind of end-to-end holistically of the 40,000 foot view of Veritonic.
I think that evolution makes a lot of sense. I mean, that path is really great. Figuring out where you want to run or what is out there to run with that fits your goals, determining if your creative is the right fit or what you can do to improve the creative, and not solely focusing on, where it's being run necessarily, learning a little bit more about what you're providing, what you're running. And then the last part is building that all together, right? The brand lift and the attribution are critical ways of during the campaign of monitoring what's going on or slightly after to figure out how you can improve on this campaign to either repeat the success or improve on the success, or even just cut the fat of what's not working.
Sure, absolutely. And you're exactly right. The goal is to kind of all these data points work together. If you start on one end with a campaign to see the effectiveness and perhaps it didn't perform as expected, well, why not? Well, what about it didn't, have the effect we were seeking? Well, that might be an opportunity for a creative test to see, well, was there anything in the copy that may or may not have resonated? Is it a busy space? Looking at our competitive intelligence side, if this is a heavily trafficked industry and you're sounding just like everyone else, it's going to be more difficult to stick out with your particular campaign. So that is the idea behind all of that. So really connect all of the dots and bring all of these different data points together to ultimately help see what's happening and optimize.
Yeah, and being in one platform, the ability to jump between all of those results and ideally use them all, for synergy is really attractive there. I mean, there's so many different things that come up, even just cyclical, which is something I think we haven't really thought about a lot in podcasting yet, just how much competition there is coming into the holiday season, for other ads and what burnouts are. Yeah, it's really cool. So
for sure.
I'd love to take a look at the UI. We ready to pull that up?
Let's do it.
Okay. Here we go. So we're brought to the first page. I assume this is right when you sign in.
Yeah, exactly. So this is, you're setting up a very first campaign, and you may be a platform, a brand, agency, whomever is working with Veritonic directly. You would have access to this platform, and you'll hopefully notice and intended to be as such, very user-friendly, very straightforward. And so I'll kind of set up a little, demo campaign here to show. So, set up your first brand specifically. So for this one, I'll do Sounds Profitable. We are a global platform and do work with all global standards, including GDPR and the EU. So if you are a EU-based company working with EU brands, you would check this here and we'd handle the data appropriately, but I'll just run with the US here.
Can I add that later?
You can go back and add that later.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's some different things that happen to that. So ideally we catch it ahead of time, but yes, if for some reason that's forgotten or some things need to happen after the fact, yes, that can be added later as well.
And that's great, because a lot of brands that we're starting to see in the podcasting space start off in one territory and then identify global. They might not adhere for each of their executions to all the same region standards. So being able to either create a separate brand in there with that specific goal, or to go back and restate it, really awesome to be able to do that.
Absolutely. And there are a number of different ways. And that's part of what my team and I are here to assist with, right? While yes, it is easy to set up, user-friendly, we want to make sure we're helping strategize and accomplishing what you're trying to do in the platform. So little nuances of that nature with split markets or things of that nature, that's what we're here to help with. So
awesome.
There you have it. Great. So blank dashboard here. We've created that brand, which did generate some code in the background, as I'll show in a moment. But first, we want to set up a particular campaign. So I mentioned this earlier, and we'll continue to bring it up. While we won't dig into brand lift too much here, they do run hand in hand pretty frequently with our clients. One for ease of use. We actually use the same pixel technology for attribution and for brand lift. So it is very common that clients will run those in parallel to kind of supplement each other from a data perspective. So while we're default to attribution, we could also say this is a brand lift campaign as well. But I will say November 22. And we have Sounds Profitable brand listed here.
And when you say the pixels are the same, or the methodology is the same, we're talking about on the exposure, tracking the ad performance would be the same pixel, whether I'm doing attribution or brand lift?
Correct. So exactly. So the exposure pixel use where we capture, this is the audience that has been exposed to the different ads or whatever the content is. If we know who those individuals are, we can actually turn around to our panel providing network to see who among that group is able to be brought into a creative or brand lift study specifically. And so we're actually able to retarget those individuals to ask supplemental questions. And I'll jump into that towards the end to kind of tease a little bit of what is there. But yes, we are able to kind of filter that into the same stream using that single pixel to capture the exposed group. So.
Which is honestly great. I mean, I know that dynamically inserted pixels focusing on like the media being inserted into the content instead of like a prefix. The power there is that you can have a ton of them, but still the ad ops management aspect of it, putting in two of them to accomplish the same thing with one company, can be kind of a headache. So the fact that you've consolidated into one and the flexibility for it to be for either, I think that's a really smart move.
That's the idea. So, and we've had good success with it thus far. And again, we just think there's a lot of value to running those both. So having, the efficiency of using that same technology just made sense, and we've gotten a lot of good value out of it. So, fantastic. Continuing on, again, we created the brand, we created the campaign. Right off the bat, you'll see some pretty standard metrics that you would expect to see, obviously with zeros here at the moment. But to that point, the next step is typically creating the pixel or pixels as you named. So I'll jump into this campaign. There's a lot here, and I'll jump over to another environment in a moment that does have some numbers that we can kind of talk through some of these to explore a little bit more. But from a setup perspective, if you actually go to the campaign placements, two different areas here. This top one will be those pixels that we name typically for dynamic ads here. So we have a number of different platforms, publishers, some of these duplicative intentionally because they have the same setup behind the scenes, but just for ease, we list them. So I'll grab a few, for instance, I'll do one Art19, one Acast, and add those two. And just by creating that, you see we have generated those unique pixels specifically. So these pixels can be shared directly with those platforms to insert on those ads themselves. Keep in mind, you can add multiple. So we have clients kind of doing this in a number of different ways, depending on the level of granularity they're wanting to see. Some will place it uniquely on the show level or the episode level. Lots of different ways that this can be done. And we do pass a number of different variables back and forth specifically, as you can see with these macros we have in there. But without getting too in the weeds, the main goal of this is that quick generation, easy to kind of make some adjustments, and this can just be copied and sent along to the specific parties to get added, and we'll start to track that traffic right away on the pixel side.
And I think it's really smart that you've added all these partners. Like you said, some of them are platforms, but those platforms also sell media, and some of them are the publishers on the platforms. By setting them up and letting someone select how that's set up, it shows that you guys are going out of your way to make sure that you have all the macros set correctly, which means the teams there are trained on how to ingest this and how to use that. But it also gives a publisher the opportunity to say, I understand that my platform can pass more macros, but I've chosen in my integration with Veritonic to not want to pass that. It's a business case that can happen. By going through all this effort, you're really setting up the publishers to make sure that they're getting a fair shake of working with this tool.
Sure. That's the idea. Again, trying to make it as easy as possible, but while still having the functionality there. And yes, that list continues to grow. We continue to, extend these relationships and have, ongoing conversations to make this process easier. So again, some good success so far. And this, has worked well. So that's the pixel side.
And the bottom one.
Oh, yes, exactly. So this is specifically in instances where it might be baked in ads or pixels are not available and you can add a prefix specifically. So because they're on a slightly different part, you may have podcasts that might cross multiple campaigns. If I actually jump over to the campaign side, and I created one already, but if you see in your podcasts, I added the daily just as a catch-all. This is an opportunity where you can add additional podcasts. So this will pull just from the Apple library. So if I just did how I built this, for instance, you can just generate a pixel right there. That can then be placed within the RSS feed. And again, we'll start to track traffic that way. But having created that, if I did want to have that podcast be included as part of this particular campaign, I could also go into that campaign placement spot as we named and say, I want to do how I built this. So
gotcha.
This will track both. So this would be a blended campaign as we'd refer to it. So it has both the pixels as well as the prefix as well. And we'd be able to track both sets of traffic and see the individual again, traffic that comes in for each. So
now if I were to be creating this, just one show is just going to do prefix just for one campaign. When I do the add to podcast, it would give me the pixel there instead of in the all campaign section.
In the it will always be in that, because the pixel will be specific to that show. It will be in that your podcast area. You're correct. Whether you're associating it with a particular campaign or not, you can still reference it here. It would just be within the campaign side if you are kind of connecting the two, if you will. So this is the catch-all for all prefixes here.
And if that podcast is already working with you directly or through another partner, and I go to add them in here, would it give me the same pixel, or would they have to upload multiple pixels?
No, wouldn't need to necessarily upload multiple. There are a few considerations to that we'd kind of talk through to make sure everything aligns, since it is a different environment, and there are a couple other things to that. But no, we can leverage existing ones, and is intended to be easy to set up, since we do have these ongoing relationships with these folks already. So
that's great. Yeah, because I mean, giving someone a pixel and then putting it in there as a prefix or dynamic ad insertion is consent. They went out of their way, they associated it there.
Sure.
But if it's already there, you guys can't simply just allow me to identify that it's there and add it to my campaign and measure it without their approval. So it sounds like as you guys continue to ramp up and have all these features, this is a great example. If someone's already working with Veritonic, work with Chase and their team to reach out to get that podcast associated with your campaign.
That's what we're here for. Yes, indeed. Trying to make it as easy as possible without, reinventing the wheel, if you will. And just because it is here, because we do have this comes up a fair bit as well, we do support universal prefix as well. So in instances where a single prefix is placed on, an entire run of network across a number of different shows where they're wanting to capture just a single prefix, we do support that as well. So just one other thing, since I've flashed it up here as well. So awesome. So again, we've finished that piece of the equation on the exposure side with the pixels as well as the prefix. Then the other side is the obviously conversions and the actions that we're wanting to take. So if we jump over to the web tracking code, so as soon as we created the Sounds Profitable brands, this was automatically generated with a unique ID. This is one of our more common actions that we can track, which is the just web visit. So if this is placed on the brand's website, for instance, anytime someone goes to that and hits it, it will be captured in our system, and we'll be able to see, by day that traffic specifically to see who came in, and we'll ultimately look back to see if they were exposed for purposes of conversions. But this is just one of many. I won't go into all of the fun code that is there, but there are quite a few just by default actions that are created right off the bat. And again, this is commonly just copied, sent over to brand specifically for the web developers to add to the website or anything of that nature. A lot can be done here, but most commonly that's the easy one. So
now that can be added to a tag manager as well as directly to the site?
Yes, indeed. And obviously there are lots out there, and there are lots of different ways these things can be implemented. So once again, we're always here to help in that instance. But yes, compatible with tag managers, number of different platforms. It can some additional kind of metadata and things can be passed back and forth. So really intended to be lightweight, but very functional and easy to use. So.
And while this does say web tracking code, if I wanted to drive people to like a mobile application, is there the ability to do that too?
Good segue. Yes, indeed. So I'll jump over to the campaign settings here, just because this is kind of the final piece of the puzzle. And I'll come back to that in just a moment. But as you expect to see, some pretty standard metrics to include here. So overall campaign dates. So our system can be tracking when that traffic is coming in specifically. Expected impressions we can capture as well if inputted. Within the attribution window. So that is actually configurable. Pretty commonly, we have clients who will do a 30-day attribution window or a 60-day attribution window. But as you might expect, that is how far we are looking between impression to see if the action was actually completed. And we'll update things accordingly. So that's the attribution window. Some basic info like currency, things of that nature. But this is what you were hitting on, success metric. So while we can capture a number of different actions, we need to designate one single action as the true conversion for purposes of the conversion rate, et cetera. And so this lists a more full kind of range of the different actions we can track specifically. So the website info that we named, but also app integrations, and even downloads of individual podcasts. So because we added specifically those two shows, we do have clients who want to have the success metric be the download of another podcast. If it's podcast to podcast promotion or things of that nature, we can leverage that here as well. So again, intended to, while we can capture multiple actions at once, and I'll jump over in a moment to a campaign that shows multiple actions, we just designate which one specifically. So in this case, I'll say the website purchase, which I won't run it at the moment, but that would get it all going here once we have some numbers in there to start tracking that and ultimately calculate accordingly. So the final pieces pertain to these are optional fields. So because if CPM is input for the individual platforms, and if a value of a success metric, so again, that purchase, what have you, is input there, we will capture return on spends, which again, I'll show in just a moment as well. So again, not required because for various reasons, some want to include it, some not, of course, but we will capture that if it is input. The last piece then is on incremental lift. So if we have a number of different ways to leverage incremental lift. Most commonly, we leverage what we refer to as a holdout cell. So if that is being utilized, our system will actually generate matching pixels for each that has been created, but specifically for a holdout audience. So you would go to the platform. We typically recommend about 10% of the total audience to say withhold the ads from this campaign and use house ads or something instead, and utilize these holdout pixels specifically. What we're able to do then is look at that traffic and compare. Let's see what the conversion was for that baseline traffic who was not exposed in that holdout cell versus everyone else in the campaign, and do a side-by-side. And I'll show an example, kind of how we have that broken out in another campaign in a moment. So that's most common, but we have some other ways as well. So typically leveraging prefixes, you can use the publisher's own traffic to also capture a baseline. So If you identify, 4 or 5 similar shows that match similar targeting specifically, we can have that be the convert or the baseline conversion rate that we compare against the exposed audience. And we of course go do things like making sure they weren't in fact exposed to both. If they are very similar, you might have some overlap. So things of that nature. But that's one way to do that as well. And then a final one that we're kind of more in the exploring phase a little bit as well, but we're working closely with our device graph partner, Newstar, that we work with in a number of different areas to look at our own traffic that we're seeing across the platform to help identify a like audience to the exposed group as well. Again, going through steps to make sure we're not capturing exposed individuals as part of this, but again, kind of mirror a like audience to see a lift, hopefully, with the target campaign. So lots of exciting things in there and involvement, but
no,
again,
I agree.
Having talk through all that. So
having options is really powerful, right? Like I think that that's really something important to harp on here. You have 3 different options for Lyft. I mean, I had the luxury of being in this space when Lyft was really taking off and being part of the teams that really helped make it stick. And we used to offer all these options, but because it became difficult, because we needed something that was, let's say, screenshot worthy to show the success of a campaign, we kind of moved away from some of the ones that took a little bit more effort. We dumbed a few things down. I don't think it was a negative. I don't think they're the wrong choices, but it was a lack of choice that kind of led us there. We were going for things that had the least chance of failure. Providing people these options is really powerful. Everybody needs to prove themselves out in different ways, and they might have different internal ways as a brand or as a publisher that they'd like to show that. So I'm a big fan of all of these. I'm also really keen on audience networks and working with device graph partners, because I think that while we have a lot of data in podcasting, being able to augment that and look at people that are bigger than podcasting. What are their other consumption habits? What other demographic, behavioral, psychographic information can we know about it? How can we layer that on there? While we are seeing the cookie and the mobile device ID go away, while we are seeing privacy tick up, the IP address is an incredibly powerful indicator, and we are going to have access to that for a long time. And being able to match that to a device graph, whose entire job is to do more with any indicator they can and to add more data on there, it just really kind of fleshes things out. So I truly love that you have 3 options here for anybody on here, and that your team, rightfully identifies that the holdout is the one that you recommend, the one that you start off with or most people go with, because you can walk them through the setup. The other ones are ones where if they want to take a step further, they have the option.
Sure, absolutely. No, and we share the excitement. Obviously, there are a lot of things that this can become, and we're excited to explore all of that as well. But yes, again, as with everything else, really trying to make this approachable and provide lots of different options to ensure success, and pros and cons to every option, of course. But no, we're really here to try and provide the most value in whatever way makes the most sense in the given instance. So
I think you're doing it. I think this UI is really straightforward. Hey, as someone who's had a lot of time in a lot of different platforms in the podcasting space, especially on the ad tech side, not a lot of them are as intuitive. I mean, I think that this is really straightforward. We're trying to work on these systems that don't need someone who is like the head of data engineering or the head of research to execute on this campaign. Maybe to dig in deeper, maybe to justify the next campaign. Sure, if they want to do something unique. But setting it up and understanding it and being able to be a junior account manager and successfully talk to the clients that you have about the platform you're using, why you're using, and their methodology, this is a step in the right direction. We haven't walked through anything that confused me about the flow of it. So, hats off there. I think this is really great.
We appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. We're, again, trying to continue that and hope that continues to be the feedback, and have gotten good feedback thus far. So no, we appreciate it. Awesome. So again, that pretty much is the extent of the setup piece. Again, kind of both sides of the equation there. And of course, as that's all input, our system would pretty much start to field that right away. But to further demonstrate, I do want to jump over to another environment, which I will do so now. All right. And so here we have an example environment with a few different brands, a few different campaigns specifically. Again, If you work directly with Veritonic and have the relationship with attribution here, you may see the entirety of all of your campaigns across brands or what have you. We do have folks, brands individually, who might see a subset. So if I was Health to Home, I might have access to this to just see my 3 specifically. But as you can see here, again, those metrics, pretty straightforward as you would expect to see, but broken out on this view specifically by a date range. So this is an adjustable date range where you can see what those metrics look like over time. But I'll jump into one of these. So I'll take a look at Healthy Eats. Across the top. Yeah, here's the exciting stuff. So across the top are those all-time metrics specifically. So total impressions, unique reach, and then calculated the frequency based on that. The individual conversions, which I'll add some context to in a moment as we look to see what that setting was, conversion rate, and then we did have a return on spends capturing the CPM and the value for the specific conversion. So before I actually dig into some of these some tabs, again, just to orient us a little bit, for this particular campaign, 7-day attribution window, a website purchase was the specific success metric that we are calling a conversion. So I'll jump into the impression side. So this is tracking all of the impressions specifically across each of the placements. So in this case, we have 3 different pixels for 3 different shows here. This is over this given date range, as you can see that this is adjustable. And this is not taking into account conversions yet. This is full impression specifically and unique reach, spend, etc., calculated based on that. So a number of things here. We talked about it. A number of different ways to kind of look at all of this data. Again, I mentioned we have folks who will do episode level placements. We have some show level. Obviously, there's lots of talk about overlap and kind of digging into all that data. So still more going into all of this, but intended to be just a very quick and easy way to see that, hey, the impressions that you're expecting to see are in fact being served up there. So that's the impression side.
And now the top section that we looked at is for the overall campaign, but now when we get under here, this is just the 7-day period or
exactly
the longer period that you select.
Yes, indeed. For each of these, it will the lower portion will respect whatever date range you have set up here, but across the top will be that all time specifically. So intended to be able to see both at once. So and as you can see it here, pretty much everything is exportable as well. So if you want to kind of dig in and do some of your own analysis or manipulation or things of that nature with the data, you have that as well. So just something to call out also.
That's great.
So that's the one side of the equation. The other is in the tracking actions. So as I mentioned, this one specifically was leveraging the purchase action as a success metric, but you can see other code blocks were placed to capture other website views, specific cart actions. So, adds to cart, a product, things of that nature, the actual checkout view. So a number of different things here. And this is configurable, right? So we're clearly not using downloads or leads. So I can just remove those columns here just to clean it up a bit. But this is broken out by day. Again, regardless of the actual impressions, this is just the web traffic specifically in this instance. So should match weblogs on the client sites in this instance specifically to see, hey, this is the traffic over the given time frame. So again, graphically in tabular format to make it easy. It's fun. I know.
I love it.
Get into it, but it's cool.
I mean, we're on a product deep dive about an attribution tech, so this is where we get to be nerdy. I love this because, having been in a similar role to you previously, like the amount of times I would set up a campaign and we would set up all the actions on there, and people would say, the purchase, the main action or whatever we're going towards wasn't successful, and then you'd be like, well, we drove like 20% of those people to your website. What happened? And then you just grab lunch, you go through the website and you're like, wow, I understand why everybody fell off this funnel.
Yeah.
It's very important to tag everything. It really is, because
absolutely,
there's different things that come into play there. There could be a different deal. You could be driving them to a unique page and that deal is not as good as the home page, but are you getting them to the site and they're converting? The funnel could have a problem. The funnel could be a 10-page survey and that they had to go through and figuring out where they drop off. And, I think brands know that. I think brands have to work really hard on it, but sometimes it's very valuable for a publisher to say, hey, I brought them there. It's your job to close it.
Right.
And having this additional information helps both the advertiser really refine their funnel and a publisher say, no, we did good. We actually did drive success here. Let's figure out how to bring it home.
Yep, you are spot on. That seeing that story as to kind of following the ball as folks go through. And if you see a huge drop off from the initial hit to hitting the purchase page, well, what happened? They're coming through, trying to find things, and navigating the website is a challenge and things of that nature. It can introduce all sorts of interesting things. So no, totally agree. While again, we designate the one true conversion, having those other pieces tagged is hugely helpful to pull out some of those insights.
You hit on something there. You said the story, and I think that that's really important, especially as we're in an age where people are trying to explore new attribution partners, maybe work with multiple of them, or pick a new one primarily. It's all about the story. It's all about the direction. It's all about the success. How do you improve the current campaign you're on? And more importantly, how do you win the next campaign as a publisher? And as an advertiser, it's how do you get the most out of every dollar spent? I think it's really important to remember that in the storytelling aspect of this, while there's tons of data in here, each partner that is going about this is slightly different. So the raw numbers, matching things one-to-one the same way when you're comparing attribution partners, brand lift partners, it's not in your best interest. You're going to go nuts trying to do it. It's never going to get there. But you'll find they directionally go similar. Where you find unique value is how the tool works overall, the different methodologies you can employ there, and how effectively your team can use that tool to get success on the existing campaign and the next campaign. So definitely don't, lose sleep over trying to compare any of these things, but the directionality of them, that's storytelling. This is a tool for storytelling for success. It will drive results if you chase the story that is driving the most success.
Yes, indeed. Very well said. Exactly right. Awesome. So the final piece to marry it all together, of course, again, we went through the impression side, we went through the tracking, the action side, if you will, then ultimately work towards the conversions, which again is the big story at the very end, of course, which, as you would expect to see, again, pulls in the impression info, but counts those conversions. So recall from the settings side, we indicated that a purchase was a conversion specifically. So you see that matches here. And so we're showing conversion rates, but also those additional actions being taken as well. So again, kind of digging into that to see as it sort of drops off as you go down the funnel there as expected. That is that story that you're describing there as people kind of go through each of those. So,
and
again,
this is all updated how frequently?
At least on a daily basis. So most commonly on a daily basis. So we're able to see all of that, but we are able to, in kind of testing periods and things of that nature, we do so more frequently to make sure things are up and running as expected and things of that nature. So once again, plug for my team coming in to help with all that. But updating daily holistically across the board. So
I think it's probably unhealthy to look at it more than daily. So good on you guys.
That's a fair point.
And then
there have been requests for others, but
I think it gets dangerous because I think there's only so much you can do with it. And it's not a knee-jerk reaction space. It's not like buying ads on Facebook where you can just immediately cut it, move the budget, and it's effective. There's way more thought that goes into it, and being given those tools to see it on a day-to-day basis probably allows you to overthink it and not in a positive way. Now, we had the option to select incremental lift. I see incremental lift on there. I know a lot of times incremental lift is something that doesn't necessarily fit into a platform. It's more like a file that you pull out. It's a report. Is that the case here? Is it built into the UI? Is it what cadence do I get access to it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is. And although this one had, let me jump over to another one that does list it here specifically. If I jump into vitamins to your door, so we can see in the campaign settings, this is one that was leveraging the holdout cell specifically. So if I do jump over to the incremental lift page, on the whole, there we have it. So as with the others, this will update specifically based on the given time frame. So in this case specifically, we had the baseline conversion rate of that holdout cell. We're able to see that. And again, obviously, some of this mocked up data in terms of numbers, these are great conversion rates in many instances. But this table does update overall, and will show that hopefully positive difference between the two rates. So in this case, a little shy of 3% overall. But yes, intended to be, here are the numbers. Here's a quick and easy screenshotable, as you named, instance, where you're able to see those differences in there and see how that traffic differs. So
I like that. I like that you could change the date range for it. I mean, obviously we set the conversion window when we built the campaign, but being able to change the date range, there's some times where, like, if you look at it week by week, it's generally pretty good. But then when you combine it all together, there might be some anomalies in certain days or certain time periods, and being able to see that and dig into that. I wouldn't use it as a way to excuse anything, but it gives you the ability to figure out what not to repeat, or what to dig deeper into. And that's really valuable.
And again, I think back to what you hit on, right? We're trying to find the story, the trend, what is happening here. Each, while there are a number of things we're putting in place, again, working with Newstar and other systems to get this data as pared down as possible. So, throughout this, we're doing things like removing noisy IPs and mapping to known entities and things of that nature. So lots of kind of data cleaning things happen behind the scenes, but ultimately what we're looking for is that trend, that story that you're describing here. And so while, as you described, there's a lot of data here, and you certainly can, and many do go in and kind of pour over it all and spend a bunch of time. It's just designed to look at it in a number of different angles to figure out what is happening, what is the story, how can I find opportunities to improve? If I see in a short time frame that, the conversion rate differed, what was happening then? Let's go take a look at the impressions. Let's see kind of what was differing specifically throughout, that might speak to ways to improve or anything of that nature. So you hit it head on with the storytelling side. So.
But that grows the whole space, right? Because I mean, everything I built at Sounds Profitable is of the mindset of trying to educate that person, the junior account manager who inherits using this tool and has to defend it, set it up, all of that. If they can go through there and they can see data that is agreed upon by their company and the vendor, and it works in a way that helps them understand it and feel comfortable with it, then they'll begin to explore. As they explore, they'll begin to improve, and they'll be able to tweak and all of that. I think that's really powerful. Being able to work with a team like yours as well, I think you're going to avoid a lot of the complaints I used to get, which was this data can't be right. Your methodology is wrong, which is my favorite complaint. Yes, the system that is powering everything out there has a problem. It's probably not user error. Being able to see the tool and really just figure things out at a step-by-step basis, change the date line, change the conversion window, change all of these other things, look at all these other engagements versus the conversions, look at the impressions. It lets you kind of puzzle out why something doesn't fit with what your expectations are, and then solve to get them to fit with your expectations, or identify that that's just not going to happen. That's what we need. This next era of this space really needs to be tools that are not only easy to screenshot, so 7 levels above you can say, yeah, thumbs up, keep spending, but also so you can dig in deeper as that junior person, say, hey, I think we should spend more here versus there because I spent 15 extra minutes with a tool that was intuitive, or time with your team to really understand how everything works.
Exactly. That's the goal. Absolutely. Which is a great segue. I mentioned, and truly, I know you had chatted with my colleague Amanda on a previous deep dive going into brand lift, so I won't do so too much. But to that point, having talked about how common it is that clients are doing those in tandem, it's to do the same thing. Let's provide additional data to this to supplement that can help explain what's going on. So I do also have an example of that for this Vitamins to Your Door campaign, which again, I won't go too in depth. Certainly encourage to take a look at the deep dive previously with Amanda. But based on by the methodology that we described, where we have pixeled folks and know who is exposed, we invite them into our environment. We've built out a question set where we'll ask a number of different questions around the particular brand, things like brand favorability, brand awareness, intents to use or subscribe to, what have you. We'll then capture a like audience, again, a number of different ways to do so, but to see what a control group is, not in the exposed group, to hopefully see a lift there. And so this is just an example of that. Again, this would be specifically on awareness. So again, we would ask of both groups, which of the following brands have you heard of? Listing Health to Home, as well as a number of different competitors. And you can see, here's a slight lift in the exposed group. 25% had heard of Health to Home versus the 17. Similarly, overall opinion, and we can see that broken out in a number of different ways on a kind of 5-point grid here. A slight lift perhaps with the exposed group, not terribly large, but by bringing them into our environment and actually capturing some additional demographic info, we can dig into this further as well. So for this particular campaign, in our instance, we were targeting females. So I think females 25 to 54. So if we cut the data and say, I want to see the exposed group, females 25 to 54, and let's see what that looks like. What that allows us to do is compare that segment as well. And now we see quite a bit of a larger lift even. So 32% of this group was aware of the Health to Home brand. Resonating, awesome. The overall opinion, you can see jump to 19% favorability compared to the previous, both the control and the overall exposed. So again, ultimately just digging into the different pieces to see, what's happening. And again, if this is the goal of the campaign, screenshotable thing to say, hey, yes, look, this is our target group. This is what we're seeing. And this is, supplementing the conversion data that we're seeing as well. So ultimately trying to, again, tell that story, show the impact, hopefully positive, of what's happening with a particular campaign. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's great. I love the fact that you have the attribution pixel and the brand lift right in one place, because I think that surveys are really critical. I think that we overlook them because podcasting gets looped in too often into a digital medium. I think we compare it to sometimes buying on Facebook or buying display ads or even CTV, and it's not always. I mean, we have some of those indicators, but not all of them. And I think that brand lift in general is really powerful to have as a baseline, to know what to compare to be able to not just look at your attribution campaign and not have anything except the next campaign to compare it to. Right. So I'm a big fan of it. It doesn't necessarily have to be on every campaign, but I think it's smart to have it as a baseline, quarterly at a minimum, to really do that. So being able to set this up and take all the, it's too hard to set up. How do I know if it's accurate? It's really expensive to field it. Being able to know that you have this set up in there as part of one of your solutions is really a gateway into that. And I hope we see a lot more of that. The last thing you said, and I want to clear on, it's okay if there's a negative lift. I think that sometimes we, especially as we're entering some tough times in the advertising world, I think it's good to know that these tools here help you figure out, should you keep working with that partner? And that doesn't necessarily mean that it just has to be all thumbs up. It just means, how did they interpret the data to get success next time? How did they interpret the data to improve where they are right now? I'm reminded of a very, very big auto insurance company, I guess a general insurance company, that was so big that getting a negative 2% lift was still a success for them, because they were so well known that, these things still drive the needle for them. Each company has their own goals. And the more you tag, the more granular you get on the media, right? The more granular you get on the site for the actions, the more you can identify where your success is. Because I'd be very shocked if a campaign drove 0 success. It might not have driven enough success, but if you drill down, you can figure out where you thought it would apply success and figure out if you need to double down further in there, or if there is an area that you uncovered that actually should be where you're focusing your attention. And tools like this, they really lend themselves to people exploring that. And that's a big part of advertising. That's justifying your inventory and the value you can bring. And for advertisers, identifying the best places for you to be associated with.
Sure, absolutely. I'll second that. While, of course, everyone always wants to see things up and to the right and positive and improvements, there is certainly an insight if you see a negative lift, right? That alone is, you're putting data behind things where often there otherwise is not. So that in itself is a helpful thing to dig into. which once again is another great segue into the final piece I was going to show. This is a little bit more within the realm of our creative measurement side, which I mentioned, which I won't go too in depth here. But as part of our brand lift studies, if we do have some of the creative that are part of the campaign, in addition to the question set after everything, we will actually play these for the different respondents to come in. And what we do, this is always a fun one to show, is actually track the emotions. So we have each of these core attributes that we invite the panelists to respond with as they are listening in real time. And so what we're able to see here is, is something happening in the creative itself, whether in the copy or in the musical elements, anything of that nature that could help explain some of the performance that we're seeing. So, here specifically, see, when you don't have the time, and this spiked the likable emotion overall, which to me says, hey, right, people are resonating with that. That's everyone's busy. It is challenging. People clued into that, and that is having a positive impact. Similarly, 98% satisfaction rating. Well, you see a little bit of an uptick in trustworthy, but it's not terribly large. Maybe not that unique of messaging. So perhaps thinking of another way to describe that, or other ways to add additional context to that. You can really, again, think through what is happening here. Perhaps even a negative lift, and we see board spiking a bit here. This might speak to the overall length, or maybe there's a disclaimer at the end, which we know has all sorts of impacts and things there, depending on the creative and kind of the particular campaign. This is just another area, again, largely from our kind of creative side a little bit, but with brand lift as well, where you can kind of dig into some things to see, hey, was there something about the creative itself that may have had an impact on the brand lift results, on the conversions within the attribution side, and holistically overall. So at least wanted to show that a little bit as part of it as well, since this is a fun another area to geek into that I enjoy as well. So
I think creative has been almost completely slept on in podcasting. I think we think about the host read ad as the entire creative, and if a host delivers a bad ad read, we assume the show doesn't work. I think that we need multiple creative executions. We need, announcer read. We need endorsed celebrity read. We need to explore all these different things. And tools like this really help people take advantage of this, because this is another aspect of this. You guys have all these tools that allow someone to holistically look at their entire campaign and the success there. As you continue to grow, the way that each one plays off of each other, and I wake up in the morning and I see insights and it says, hey, maybe this creative doesn't resonate with this demographic group that you're targeting or this specific show. The way each of these can connect and the way you're already giving people insights into ways that they can improve is fantastic. I'm really excited to see the future of this platform, because I think you have all of those key points. I really do believe that you have every area that someone needs to look at to measure their success and to improve and continue winning business and continue finding the best places for them to advertise. So I love it.
We appreciate it. Yeah, that is the goal. So we appreciate that feedback. And again, I've been fortunate to have some good success and bringing lots of good insights to all sorts of different platforms, brand agencies, all of the above. So really excited to continue as we continue to build out the platform as well. So
yeah, well, I'll use this for me. I'll get to say a good segue on this part here, because here's the truth of it. This is a great walkthrough. I think we did a good job here to walk you through the value of this platform, and I'm excited about this, and Chase is passionate too. You can see that. And there's a lot of great tools here, but your specific needs are going to be different. Chase and his team are available for you to walk through this with. They'll do a demo for you. And I really recommend going to veritonic.com, reaching out, learning more about it. Because while this hopefully gives you enough to know that this is right for you, take advantage of the fact that a team is going to sit there and really work with you on each piece of that to make it fit your company's needs and what you want to accomplish.
Absolutely. Please do. We're here. We're open. We're excited to dig in and take advantage. Please, truly. We'd love to chat.
Well, Chase, thank you so much for joining me. And again, go to veritonic.com to check out more all about this product and all the other great products that Veritonic has to offer.
Appreciate it, Bryan.